Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are, or good evening, perhaps, wherever you are in the world. Welcome along to our lunchtime in Australia, anyway, conversation on improving virtual teamwork. My name's Grahame Gerstenberg, and stepping in for Danette Fenton-Menzies today, who unfortunately is not feeling 100%, still getting over her second vaccination shot. So she sends her apologies and regards. So excited to have you with us today, and I want to try and make this as informative and as interactive as we can. And we've only got 30 minutes, so I don't want to try and go over too much content. But I thought it would be helpful maybe just talk a little about what's different in the team hybrid work environment at the moment, and then talk about some of the things that we can do, whether we're leading teams or whether we're working in teams, to improve how teams can work in this interesting virtual space we're in at the moment. But I wanted to start with a question, and that is, what are some of the challenges that you're currently experiencing or facing in working in virtual teams? As always, I would love for you to just, if you feel comfortable or you can do that, turn your video on, say hi, unmute yourself. If that doesn't work for you, please feel free to use the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that as we go through. So what are some of the challenges you're facing working in a virtual team at the moment, or leading a virtual team? Okay, so some of the things that often come up around this issue of working virtually or remotely, the common ones are things like technology. Jessica Gray, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. More effort to create connection. Yeah, it is such an important thing. And we will talk a little more about creating connection, about connecting with other people. Technology makes it efficient in terms of being able to connect with other people and communicate with other people. It's absolutely efficient because we can literally connect people from all around the globe in a single meeting, provided we've all got connectivity. But the connection piece is very different. And as human beings, we know, and we've known for a long time, there's a lot of science behind the understanding that we genuinely need to feel connected and feel connections with other people. It's as much an emotional thing at the cellular level as it is an intellectual thing. And that's something that is not impossible to do online, but certainly takes more time and effort. Some of the other things that come up are around communication and distraction. One of the big issues sometimes with virtual teams, and teams are still sort of coming to grips with how we make this work, is just little things like creativity and innovation. Now, how do we foster that in a group environment when we're all remote? Because if done well, the typical group session where we literally have a brainstorming session in person is often a very rich environment for creativity and innovation. Not impossible to do it remotely, but certainly can be a little more challenging. So I thought it might be helpful just to talk about some of the stats in terms of what's going on at the moment. This is a survey from a couple of months ago. So admittedly, we're all in different stages or forms of restriction around work and travel and sharing, social encounters, etc., with other people. Obviously, most of Australia at the moment is in some form of lockdown, although I believe some of it's starting to ease. But in the survey recently, 83% of the CEOs surveyed said they wanted staff back in the office. Not surprisingly, only 10% of staff were keen to get back into the office. And I imagine for many, if you have a reasonable commute to and from work each day, then just the simple pleasure of not having to do the commute for many people is a huge incentive. 85% of people believe remote work makes them better pet owners. Not sure how, I'd love to know what the pets think about that, but that's possibly true because I literally have more time to connect with my pets. People in remote workspace experience better mental health. So I less stress, I feel calmer, I feel more confident, I also feel more productive, which makes me feel better about myself. Better mental health, less stress, remote workers, 67% of remote workers who were surveyed in this particular piece of research said that they were exercising more whilst they were working from home. 80% of them felt that they were or had become a better spouse or partner when they were working from home. 64% also reported that their sex life was better. Who knew? So I also pretty quickly, Jessica, sorry, I'm a little slow on the chat, but I will get there. Dog's getting 3 walks a day and he agrees. Yeah, I saw a friend of ours shared a video recently of a man dressed up as a dog who was pleading with the governments to end the lockdowns because he just can't do any more walks. He's like, I'm done as a dog, I've had enough, go back to work. I thought it might be helpful to share some stats from a study that the Adecco Group ran. And admittedly, this is 12 months old, but it involved 8,000 employees across Australia, France, Germany, Italy, UK, so a big chunk of Europe. And some of the things they found is that 77% of employees believe that a mix of office-based work and remote work is an optimal model. So yeah, when we talk about the hybrid work thing at the moment, it really is that blend of working from home and sometimes working in the office. 79% want more flexibility in how and where they work. And one of the things that we are starting to understand about remote work and hybrid work is that the old model, the original, it's almost like the industrial age model of having everybody in an office may have been the most productive model 100 years ago. It's not necessarily today. And in fact, in a lot of cases, it's absolutely not the most productive model. Sometimes it's hard to get employers to shift their thinking around that. 68% of employees believe it's time to revisit the length of the work week. Again, there's some good science and a number of very impressive entrepreneurs who are doing amazing things with their companies, and they don't work. There is no such thing as a 40-hour work week. Some of them are doing better, actually being more productive, more creative, more innovative, and only working 4-day weeks rather than 5. But again, yeah, we are hanging on to a work model that was created over 100 years ago. 74% believe contracts, performance agreements should be based on meeting the needs of the business rather than the hours worked. We do a lot of work in the performance management space, and that's a fundamental, it has been for a long time. We should be focusing on what do we need to achieve, what do we need to produce in terms of outputs and outcomes for the business rather than how many hours are you turning up. Emotional intelligence is another massively important thing for people working remotely at the moment. Self-awareness, self-management is hugely important, but also being able to understand the emotional state of others on my team and being able to help them manage that. 81% of employees want managers to demonstrate a leadership style focused on empathy and a supportive attitude. Managers have had a huge, huge challenge over the last 16 months. Many of them have gone from managing a team, and I know I go into the office every day and I can see my team. And part of that management is literally management by immediate or direct supervision, because I can just go out of my office and there they are, or we all share a workspace. Managers today are still, I think, coming to grips with how do I manage people when I can't see them, unless we get it on a Zoom call or a Teams call. So how do I manage that? And how do I manage myself in that space? Things like work-life balance, job security, and trust are becoming more important. And the whole work-life balance is still back to front. It should be life work. But job security is, I think, an issue for a lot of people at the moment. And the trust thing. So one of the things we know teams need in order to perform better in any environment, whether this is a remote team, whether it's a hybrid arrangement, whether it's a team physically working in the same building, teams need trust over and above everything else. And Google's Project Aristotle talked about psychological safety. Psychological safety has become such a big buzzword in the last 5 or 6 years. And it's just a fancy way of saying trust. And trust, we've known for decades that trust is the key the secret ingredient to teams performing better. Some of the stats around digital upskilling. So one of the other challenges for us in working remotely or in a hybrid environment is getting to grips with technology in a much more direct way. A lot of people feel, 61% of the people surveyed felt that their digital skills have improved because of remote working. And that's not surprising, because all of a sudden we actually have to become better at a lot of the IT-related skills, simply because we can't immediately ask a colleague sitting next to us who knows computers better. 72% want more digital upskilling post-pandemic. Again, makes sense. 30% would change jobs within the same sector if there was an opportunity to learn new skills. That in itself is not surprising, because one of the key drivers for people in terms of motivation is the opportunity to learn more, to get better, to learn new skills. The last point I wanted to make on this survey was employers are really feeling the pinch. 86% of the respondents in this survey said that their employer was most responsible for ensuring a better working place after the pandemic. And I think we probably need to shift the after the pandemic to through the pandemic. It's not going away anytime soon. So it really is, there's a lot of responsibility on employers to look at how they change, how they pivot, how they change the structure, the operational aspects of their organisation, whether it's business, whether it's government. So what do we need to do to create safe, productive, collaborative, innovative environments for our teams to flourish in remotely? So a quick question for everyone, if I can. What excites you the most about the year ahead working in this sort of hybrid or remote environment? I'd love to hear from you. Again, feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to use the chat, that would be wonderful. What excites you the most? Jessica, thank you again for that. So best of working in the office and at home. Yeah, okay, so the best of both worlds. I like that. Now, if we can get our head around the idea that, okay, this is different. So where we're at the moment, almost nobody, no, in fact, absolutely. Nobody alive has experienced this. What we've gone through in the last 18 months is completely unique, because the world has never been the way it was in November 2019 through to March, April last year, when it pretty much took hold around the world. So we could go back to the Spanish flu and say, well, that was the last time we had a major sort of pandemic, but the world was a very different place then anyway. So this is all new, and we don't know where we're going yet, but we are going forward, and I think that's the important thing. So whilst it's quite normal, quite common for us to feel some level of uncertainty or anxiety or stress, worry about where we're at and where we're headed, it's also, I think, hugely important to try and remind ourselves that this is an experience. What if it's an adventure? What if it's an adventure? Does that potentially put a different spin on things? Some tips for managing hybrid work, and more importantly, again, how do we improve teams working together remotely? If you're a team leader or a manager, and look, to be honest, I think even if you just work in a virtual team, if you're a team member, look after yourself first. Hugely important if you're a manager. Manage yourself first before you worry about managing others. And part of that comes back to things like self-care, because we know that when we look after ourselves first, it builds more resilience for us. And when we have more resilience, we are better able to cope with stress. We are more positive. We think more efficiently. We communicate better. We can empathize more with others. It gives us more clarity of thought. Because if I look after myself and I have more resilience, then my brain tends to slip into that fight or flight, really messy state far less. So I can think more clearly. I'm also more creative, and that improves my performance. So if everybody in the team decided that the most important thing they needed to do was take care of themselves first, then over time, it has to happen that we become clearer in terms of our thinking, we become more trusting, we become more collaborative, more innovative, more creative, and we perform better. And it really does start with us. I'd have to check your face, folks. Hashtag check your face. I have to attribute this to Danette. This is something that Danette said in a workshop one day, and because I have a warped sense of humour, I thought that's a brilliant hashtag. Check your face. If you want to make working in teams, in remote teams, more efficient, if you want to build more trust, do this. By the way, there's a wonderful friend of ours, Dr. James Rouse, who lives just outside of Denver, an amazing human being. He's got one of the most incredible and most genuine smiles I've ever seen. Check your face, ladies and gentlemen. If you are working in a remote team, every time you go to connect with somebody else on the team, if you're leading the team or if you're just part of the team, check your face. Do the smile thing before you click on the link to join the Teams call or the Zoom call, or before you pick up the phone to ring somebody to have a conversation with them. And again, there's some really solid science to show that when we smile, apart from the fact that it makes us more positive, it also helps other people feel more inclined to trust us. As long as the smile is genuine. If it's a fake smile, they can pick up on that, and that has the opposite effect. Smiling puts us into a more positive frame of mind, which makes our brain perform around 31% better. It's really simple. It's still free. So hashtag check your face. For me, it's a great reminder. Again, every time you interact with another human being, particularly in a work situation, check your face. What's it doing? A couple of other tips on how we can improve remote work. And the first is around communication. Communicate. If you are leading a team in particular, over-communicate. So literally you check in, not because and this is checking in, not checking up. Huge difference. Check in with your team, check in with your team members, with your colleagues regularly, and keep doing that until they start pushing back saying that this is too much. Yeah, one call a day or one call every couple of days is all I need. I'm okay. But we really need to start with the over-communication thing. And the other point I was going to make, when we communicate with others, if we're working in a remote team or a virtual team, start social. If you're having a regular catch up with the team, whether it's once a day, once a week, whatever it happens to be, start social. If you're just checking in with one of your colleagues or with one of your team members, start social. Spend the first 5, 10, 30, 60 seconds just checking in with how they're going as a human being. How are things at home? How's the family, children, etc.? What have you been doing to keep yourself, what have you been doing to look after yourself? How's your garden going? Whatever it happens to be, start social, then get into the work piece after that. Massively important. Just a couple of other things around sound and lighting. So again, we know from brain science that if I'm on a video call with somebody else and I can't really make out their face, my level of trust with that person diminishes. It's a subconscious thing, but it's a very powerful thing as well. If I'm on a video call or just a normal phone call with somebody and I can't really understand them, like the connection is poor or their audio is poor or their microphone doesn't work well, same deal. It diminishes my trust. And that, because it's the bedrock, it's the foundation of high-performing teams, that affects everything else above it. So do what you can to get your sound and your lighting as good as you can make it. If you have a headset, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, use the headset rather than just rely on the built-in microphone on your laptop or your computer, wherever possible. Take time to reflect. If you can find, I have no idea where that mountain is. It looks, the view is amazing. Reminds me of actually being on the top of Mount Wellington in Hobart a long, long time ago. Same situation. We were up outside on the top of Mount Wellington and the clouds were below us. A phenomenal thing. Take time to pause, to stop and reflect. And in fact, where we are at the moment, this reflection on what's going on and what am I thinking, what am I feeling, what did I learn yesterday, what did I experience, was it good or bad? Did I react to something that someone said or did yesterday and maybe I could have chosen to respond differently? This, again, is part of managing ourselves. And make sure you set aside time during your day to completely disconnect, particularly from technology. Just turn everything off, shut it down. The world will still go on, and spend some time reflecting. And sorry, just while we're on the reflecting thing, another tactic that can be very, very helpful is journaling. And you don't have to do it every day, but part of my reflection process is just having get yourself a notebook and spend 10, 15, 20 minutes. You can spend longer if you want, just writing about things that you've experienced, good and bad. It's all about learning. Reflection, hugely important. Another thing that this is a tactic that we've been using, because our team, we have part of our teams in Melbourne, we have staff in Canberra. We also have a team, one of our team helps run a farm next door to us outside Gundagai with her husband. So our team is all remote, all virtual anyway. So one of the things that we have been doing consistently, and we've been doing this for years, even before the pandemic thing started, is to have regular huddles. You could call it a weekly team meeting, but it literally is a huddle. And the idea is, if you think about the image on the slide here at the moment is people standing up, huddled around. That's what we need to have. That's what we can have in a virtual environment. It's short. So the idea is the huddle should, depending on the size of your team, maximum 20 minutes. If you can do a daily huddle with your team, make it super fast, but it's a fantastic way of just getting everybody focused on what we're doing. It's also a great way of checking in with the rest of the team. So we have a client in Sydney, has a team of 14. They have an 8-minute huddle. So the huddle is not about telling stories and sharing yarns. You do that socially, that's different. The huddle is really, what am I grateful for? What's one thing I want to celebrate from this week or last week? What am I working on today? And is there anything I'm stuck on? That's it. It's just a really super quick way for the team to get focused. And if anybody is stuck on something or needs help, you take that outside of the huddle. So the idea is just to raise it and then we address it outside of the huddle. So think about how you can create, if you don't already, a regular huddle with your team. Make it a stand-up thing, because that also helps make it shorter and more focused. One of the other things that can help at the moment is just to have a screen. And it's perfectly okay. If you need to just go, maybe don't do it around your children, that might freak them out. This is about reframing. So to go from this to this, we're in a messy space right now. And it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's quite normal for a lot of us to be thinking and feeling like this. It's just everything is crazy and I'm stuck at home. And I had a coaching call with a client last week who was talking about being in a prison within a prison. So his first prison was home because he's in lockdown and he can't go out anywhere and he can work from home, so he does work from home. And unfortunately, he was born overseas. And his second prison, he can't get home to see his family. So he's got elderly parents and they're reasonably healthy at the moment, but it's still, it's hard for a lot of us. What shifts us from this to this is thinking. That's it. It's reframing our current experience. So we can get from this to this by simply becoming more aware, and this goes back to the reflection thing before, becoming more aware of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and then asking ourselves a better question. Okay, so how can I think differently about the current situation? And sometimes just thinking about, well, what have I got to be grateful for? Because for most of us, it actually is a pretty long list. So think about reframing. If you find that your thoughts are tending you down this path, and this is sort of how you feel a lot of the time, think about, okay, what do I need to shift to be able to become calmer? Because again, when I'm calmer, I think more clearly, my brain works better, I trust more, I collaborate, communicate better with others. It's a win-win for everybody. One last thing on the virtual teams, on the remote teams, and that is to be really clear or very mindful of not ending up in this sort of us and them situation, particularly with hybrid work, where we have some of the team working back in the office and then others not coming into the office at all. And it's, again, a fairly normal sort of thought process for us to go down, where we can start thinking about us and them. And that's hugely problematic for teams because it's a divider. And we don't need division. What we need is more collaboration, more trust, more communication. So if you notice this starting to come up in your thinking or in your the way you speak about things, or others in your team are starting to talk around this sort of us and them thing, that's a conversation to have with the team. Now, how do we prevent this? How do we fix it? All right, I'm mindful of time, but I really did want to check in and ask, so what's in your experience at the moment working remotely, what's not working for you in terms of virtual teams? Again, feel free to unmute yourself, use the chat. Some of the common things that come up with virtual teams are, again, communication, an erosion of trust because we don't communicate as openly and as consistently as we could, and a lack of clarity around things like goals for the team. Although, to be honest, again, it is important for the team to have a shared sort of vision and shared understanding of our goals for the team. More importantly at the moment, for virtual teams is getting really clear on things like process. How are we getting things done? Just, tea room or water cooler chats, yeah. That's actually a really important point. And so thank you for raising that. Here's a question for everybody. How can you create a virtual water cooler environment? Is it possible? Yeah, absolutely. So could you just have an agreement with the whole team or somebody else in the team or a couple of people in the team that every couple of days at X o'clock or whatever, and maybe you just do it really randomly, but let's just get together for 10 minutes and have a chat around the water cooler. Get a picture of a water cooler and use it as a background on whatever platform you're using. So again, that connection, that social connection, because it's also important from a social learning perspective. So whilst we can't physically be together, there's a lot of things that we can do to replicate some of the good things that we experience about working physically with other people. Social chat, 5-minute hold, yeah. Thanks, Jessica. So it is possible. We just need to think about, okay, what's missing? What do I don't currently have that worked well before, and how can we replicate that as much as possible in a virtual environment? Ladies and gentlemen, I am very mindful of time, and we are just about up. So before we finish up today, I would like to firstly thank you for being part of the conversation. I hope it's been helpful, and I really appreciate your input into the chat. I'd love for you, before you leave, to think about what's one action that you can take after this session today that you feel might help you be more effective in working in a team or leading a team in that hybrid environment. Write it down. If you have somebody that you trust that you work with, use them as an accountability buddy and share your one action with them. And so, look, check in with me in a week's time to see whether or not I'm actually doing it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. Again, a massive thank you from me, and I again pass my apologies on from Danette. Very grateful to have the opportunity to chat with you today. I hope it's been helpful. Please look after yourselves, look after each other, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thank you.